Okay, so I'm going to begin the webinar now. So firstly, I'd like to say thank you for everyone to take the time to join this, and I hope that it'll be useful for you all. So the purpose of this webinar is just to kind of go back to the basics of release. So what I mean by that is we'll be reviewing the product from kind of the beginning. We'll also be talking about best practice throughout and kind of the tips going forward for you all to use on your reports or pages or whatever you're using release for. And that's kind of the plan. So I'm going to take you through kind of the agenda for the webinar today. So we're going to begin, as I said, with a product overview. And throughout that, I'll be paying some special attention to things like what makes a killer background image. We're going to be spending a little bit more time on online coverage. So what I mean by that is the articles widget and a deeper dive kind of formats. We'll then follow that up with looking at how to share pages and best practice tips surrounding that. And we're also going to look at tracking engagement through the reporting functionality on Released. And then finally, we will look at questions, time permitting. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the side of the panel, and I will answer them as much as I can. I do have some ready prepared questions, so I'll go through those as well for you that have been asked from other clients prior to this. So to kick things off, I think I'm just going to go back to the complete kind of restart of Release and what it tries to do. So we work with a lot of teams that have a range of stakeholders, and they might be internal stakeholders or external stakeholders. And all of our clients need to kind of share their coverage and content with those people. And typically, just by the nature of having stakeholders who obviously have other things to always be doing, they might be quite busy and only have a few minutes spare to kind of look at the reports that you're creating. So typically, the traditional kind of outset is that clients have struggled to kind of engage with these stakeholders. So we have really tried to invest a lot of time in creating Release to help all of our clients showcase their work in a much more visual and digestible way. And that in turn helps you to demonstrate the value of your work. So for some people on this webinar, you might not have ever kind of used Release before, or there might be people in here that have. So for those that haven't, as you'll see throughout this webinar, it's a really quick and easy system to use, and has been built for people with absolutely no technical expertise at all. So with that in mind, I'm going to start kind of going over the product with you, and we're going to be looking back at the basics. So once you've logged into the released account that you have, you'll be brought to the control panel like so. So here you've got the two options that you typically will spend most of your time in. So that's the Brands tab and the Pages tab. So we're going to first of all start talking about the Brands tab. So a brand is anything that has its own color, logo, or client or service or anything like that, anything that has its own look and feel. So all of the pages that you create going forward under this brand, or think about it as a folder, so anything, all these pages sitting under this folder will adopt the same look and feel. So as many of you will know, this is where you enter in your brand information. So here you've got the option to select all your header information, including placing your logo and color schemes. You also have here the option to set your background image. So we're going to have a pause and talk about what makes a killer background image aligned with best practice. So quite often I get asked from our clients kind of what is it that makes a good background image. So it's probably worth mentioning why background image is important in the first place. So I think it's worth kind of stressing that background image really can make or break a page. So we've seen a few thousands over the past few years, and kind of from that we've selected a few simple do's and don'ts in selecting a background image for your page or your reports. So I'm going to go through 5 things with you quickly, and those are kind of our best practice tips. So to begin with, a background image should be relevant. So what I mean by that is it should reflect the content or kind of logo or anything or the scheme of your page. So it should have some relevance to the report. So the second thing is that subtlety is key. So it's really important, whilst your background image, is very important for bringing the page alive, it shouldn't interfere too much with the content or anything like that on the page. So what I mean is that you should try avoid something that's too cluttered. The third point is that use your space wisely. So those that are familiar with release and the layout, you'll know that most of the widgets sit at the center of the page. So we encourage you to kind of think of ways, or think of an image rather, that extends beyond the middle of that. So it has some imagery kind of on the side of the widgets. The fourth tip is the dimensions of your image that you select are quite important. Roughly speaking, they should be between anything from 1,400 pixels wide to 800 pixels tall. So just to reiterate, they should be roughly between 1,400 pixels wide and 800 pixels tall. And the final point that I would like to make on this is try to always put the background image display to fill. So you obviously have the options here as to have a static background image or tile. What we see working the best is the fill option. So I'm just going to run through that quickly again. So a background image should be relevant and that should reflect the content of the page. Subtlety is key, meaning that it shouldn't interfere or distract from the content on the page at the same time. The third point being that you need to use your space wisely. So just be mindful that all widgets are in the center of the page. They might block some parts of the image out. Dimensions are also really important. So again, that's 1,400 pixels wide and 800 pixels tall. And you should also set it to fill. Any questions on this going forward, don't hesitate to kind of get in contact with me. That's absolutely fine. So back to the product and the brand, you also have the options here to select the widget colors and fonts, like so. And once you've created your brand, all that you need to do is press save and finish. So once that's complete, usually you'll start creating your page, which is what we're going to do now. And this is probably the most where you spend most of your time when you're in a release count. So we're going to select the brand that we've just created, and we're going to enter a headline like so. You also have the option to enter a date. That does nothing other than sit below the title. So feel free to do it, but it's obviously not, it's fine if you don't too. So once you've entered in that information, simply just press save and launch Page Builder. So this brings you to the page that most of you will be quite familiar with. So just for context and just best practice, refresh again. The page is broken into a highlight section, which is the top bar going across the top. And then also what we consider is the deeper dive section. So those are the three widgets that are broken into the three columns. So just for kind of context about this, your highlight section, as it might suggest on the tin, is really where you highlight your key content stats or any information. And the purpose of this is when we kind of consider back to what release tries to do, it tries to encourage your engagement that you're getting from your execs or any other stakeholders or clients or anyone that you might be sending these reports to who don't have that much time. So by that, we think that it's really important to have your key coverage in the most visible and dynamic way, which is seen in the highlight section. The deeper dive section is also very important and is a way to really kind of support any highlights section that you have, or just be for those visitors that require a little bit more information. So that's just the context when we're building release pages to bear in mind. So we're going to look at kind of going through these widgets in turn, and we're going to look at best practice and what they can be used for and what is a really good use case for each of these widgets. So I'll take you through kind of the training side of it and also just some tips going forward. So we're going to begin with the text widget, which is obviously one of the most simple widgets that we have, but nevertheless it's a really important widget, and I really stress the importance of having this as kind of an introduction. So what we see this being used for really well is by doing a short and concise summary of the page that's about to be folded out to your recipient. So when someone lands on your page, they should have an idea of kind of what are the key achievements and key pieces of coverage or stats or any other kind of information you have on your page in a really visible way straight away. So the introduction shouldn't be too long, obviously, and you can either have it kind of how we're formatted on this example, but also 3 bullet points or so and just kind of the key achievements. So this way, your recipient lands into the page and knows exactly from the outset what to expect, which is obviously very beneficial for those that might not have too much time. So that's the text widget kind of wrapped up very quickly. So we're going to move to the quote widget now. So the quote widget is a really useful way to drive attention to anything that might go amiss. So, you know, often you'll have maybe a customer or a journalist or any kind of other service provider say something about your brand, company, or anything that is relevant, and it really captures what you're doing quite well. So it's important these things don't go amiss, and obviously you want to showcase them to anyone that's seeing these pages. So again, the quote widget's a really good way to drive attention to those things that otherwise might have gone amiss. So the quote widget works in a very similar way to the text widget, where you just enter in the text like so. And just put the source of your author and press save. So as you can see, that kind of pulls through a really dynamic and visual way to drive attention to something that's really quite important for your report. Okay, so now we're going to look at the articles widget. And this is usually used to showcase your online coverage, which is, you know, growing with quite a lot of importance, and a lot of our clients really value this widget and is really helpful for them. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on going through the functionalities of this widget and also a little bit of best practice surrounding it. So many of you will be quite familiar with this widget, so I'm just going to breeze through kind of that side of it. So key online coverage, like so. And you obviously go to the Manage Articles option there. So you've got two options for those that don't know. You have the option to upload a URL straight from your spreadsheet. So this is beneficial for those that might have quite a few URLs that they need to upload. Or alternatively, you can upload manually the articles that you wish to have. So for purpose of example, we're going to do that. So I'm going to copy and paste these URLs like so. Press save. And again, I'm going to copy and paste, like so, and then press save. Okay, so as you can see, it pulls through a really concise and clear snapshots through to that article and presents it in this carousel format, like so. So that's really beneficial for those, again, those stakeholders that might be quite busy. They have these articles in front of them in a really concise fashion. There's no need to link through to these articles, and the information is there in front of them. But nevertheless, they have the option to click through if they so wish. So in terms of the best practice side to this widget, what we kind of try to encourage is that you select and curate the best pieces of your coverage to go into this articles widget. So what I mean by that is if you've achieved, I don't know, 50 or 100 pieces of coverage, it's a really quite useful to think about those really impactful pieces that you've had. And the reason for that, again, goes back to this whole situation that I'm sure all of us are quite familiar with, is you want people to engage with the really top achievements that you have. And the way to do that is by showcasing the very best. But nevertheless, we really do acknowledge that volume is just as important. But there are other ways that you can demonstrate the volume of your work. So what I mean by that is, for example's sake, you got 50 pieces of coverage in a month. However, 4 or 5 of them really stood out and are really top tier. So what we'd encourage in that situation is place those 4 or 5 widgets, articles into the widget, and demonstrate the value or the volume of your work in a different way. So that can be through the stats widget, which I'll go on to talk about a little bit more later. But that's just kind of a best practice tip to bear in mind, and I hope that it's useful for you. But just going back to, I guess, the functionality of the articles widget. So if we, for example, look at this article here, it mentions a few brands, and you know it's got a lot of things going on in it. And if we pretend that we are Topshop for pure sake of example, you're kind of mentioned in amongst all of these other big brands, and also you feature about halfway down the page, like so. So when we look at what release has done, it automatically goes and fetches a snapshot, which is really helpful and great. But there are these situations where maybe it doesn't pull through a snapshot that's really reflective of the work that you've done. So we've thought about ways to kind of overcome this, and we've worked really hard on updating the articles widget. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that now. So if we go to this article, and like I said, we're going to pretend to be Topshop for pure sake of example, what this widget's done is pulled through some imagery and some text like it does. However, this image is a Fuller's logo or kind of image that relates to something that's not Topshop, so it's not really that helpful to have on your page. So from that standpoint, it'd be really useful if you could tailor that image. So lo and behold, you're able to do so on this. So if you just roll over the actions cog on the article that you want to tailor a little bit, you've got these options here. So you've got the option to select an image, or you've got the option to edit headline and text and add a caption. So before we go into kind of how you do that and what it does, it's worth just mentioning this really gives you full flexibility and kind of control over these images, articles rather, that are being seen by your recipients. So for example, we're going to start by selecting an image. And again, release automatically goes and fetches a wide range of images that feature on that page. However, there might be a situation where the image still isn't appearing that you would like to use. So you've also got the option to upload an image from my computer or your computer. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use that image, which is the Topshop shop window image using that article. And then press done. So there you can see that the image is being tailored to better reflect the work of Topshop. But again, your headline still mentions Topshop in amongst of others, and also the blurb that's being pulled through relates to Westfield. So we're going to edit those now by selecting the edit headline and text option. So we're going to edit that like so, and like so. So there you've got a completely kind of curated version of that article that was originally pulled through, and it's much more reflective of the work that you've been doing. As I said, you also have the option to add a caption. So this is really useful if you really want to pull out a crucial bit of information. So we're going to do that by doing this and add a caption like so. And then we're going to press save. So there you have kind of your full image of the new article that you've kind of given to your recipients, and it's completely curated to really reflect the work that you've done. So from a side note of this kind of scenario that I've told you about, this is really beneficial for situations if your article is appearing behind a paywall. So maybe some of you have already seen this, but it doesn't quite pull through something the way that you would like it to. Then this is a really good way to kind of ensure that everything gets seen and is really beneficial for you going forward. So that's just kind of a wrap up of the deeper dive section on the articles widget. So any other questions relating to that, please don't hesitate to let me know. And if you have any relating to that, feel free to add it into this webinar. So now we're going to go back to the product itself, and we're going to look at the gallery widget. So again, the gallery widget is a way to kind of upload or feature print coverage, or other types of the use case for this is any other kind of imagery. So that could be from an event or from like a campaign or anything along those lines. So we're going to look at doing this now, and we're going to use print coverage as an example for the gallery widget. So you're going to select your images like so, select them from your computer, like that. And then you also have the option to kind of readjust the order of them slightly if you so wish. You also have the option to add captions, like so, or any URLs that you would like to do. So once that's done, press save and done again, and then save again. So again, what this pulls through is a really dynamic and visual kind of format of these images or print coverage pieces, and is really quite engaging for any kind of recipient to view. So again, aligned with best practice, kind of follow suits of the articles widgets, where we gently encourage that kind of less is more is the good approach to be taking on these pages. So if you have some really key coverage that you really think outshines some, it's really kind of a beneficial thing to just showcase that and showcase the volume in other ways. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about how you can maybe do that. So now we're going to look at the stats widget. And this is a really great way to show volume and key metrics. So we're going to look at doing this now. So as many of you know, this is kind of what the form that brings up when you do the stats widget. So we're just going to go through kind of adding a few now. So for those that don't know, you add kind of that statistic here, the description down here, and select an icon that matches. So I will show you how to do this, like so. So say you've got 50 pieces of total coverage in the month, and we're going to select this icon to reflect that. And again, say we're going to talk about top tier publications, so the best kind of articles you've achieved. Then we're going to select that to reflect that. Then we're going to look at another, just for the purpose of example. Say we've got 80% positive sentiment from the month. And we're going to use a little smiley face. And then just another. Say you have a big event and you had about 200 attendees, just for example. You also have the option to change colours like so. And then once that's done, you can press save and save again. And what that does is pull through a really succinct way of showcasing kind of coverage or any kind of other key metrics that really support your report or page that you have created. So as just to recap on best practice, what we've done here, just for sake of example, say we had about 3 pieces of online coverage in this here that we felt were really beneficial for kind of getting the message across of what we've achieved. But yet we have really demonstrated that actually we've got 50 pieces of coverage, and nevertheless this gets seen by anyone that's looking at this page and can see both of those things. So that's really beneficial for those that might not have as much time to kind of scroll through 50 pieces of coverage. And just from a side note, the stats widget is really useful to also use as an event calendar. So if you have any kind of upcoming events or any kind of other key information in that sense, you also have the option to kind of just adjust the icon to be the icon here and enter any kind of key events. And it's a really, again, succinct and impactful way to demonstrate that. So that is the stats widget kind of wrapped up nicely for you. So now we're going to look at some of the other widgets, and I'm going to look at the video widget in particular now. So the video widget is a great way to kind of showcase more dynamic content. So when you get to this screen, you can see that there's 2 options for uploading a video. The first being uploading a video from your computer, and the second doing it through an embed code. So for example, for today, we're going to do an embed code upload. And we're going to just select a video like so. So once you're onto a page, or a video rather, all you need to do is click on the video like so, and it'll bring up this. And if you select copy embed code like that, it automatically pastes it onto your clipboard, which then you can paste into released. So here, when you bring that up, we're just going to go into the preview of this page. What you can see is that this video is visible to anyone on this page directly in the widget itself, meaning there's no extra click away that anyone needs to do to view that video. And obviously it's quite a big step from traditional reporting methods where maybe you would just have a print screen of that on your report. So the video widget's a really great way to kind of showcase any supporting coverage. So that could be a campaign video or anything like that, or can be put into the highlight section if you achieved a really key piece of kind of airtime that you want to showcase, obviously. So that's kind of the videos widget wrapped up for you. So now we're going to look at the documents widget, which is this widget here. And the document widget is another kind of mechanism where you can demonstrate the volume of your work. So what I mean by that is if you have coverage lists or any other kind of coverage files, maybe from kind of a media monitoring service or anything like that, the Documents widget is a great way to have that featured on your page and kind of demonstrate the value. And for any of those who want to look at that document can do so by having it directly on the page. So just for context, the Document widget allows you to have PDF, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. So that is really beneficial. So key document, and you select it directly from your computer, like so. And for the purpose of example, I'm just going to upload a Excel sheet of coverage, and then again press save. So we're just going to go back to the preview mode again. And what is really useful about having the document widget, like kind of similar to the video widget, is that the recipient can feature that view that document straight away without having to download it or anything like that. So they have the option to view it full screen, like so, when this pulls up, like so, and also has the option to download the information. So just for a little bit more context, for those people that have clients or any kind of other stakeholder looking at these pages who typically are busy, increasingly mobile's a way that people view release pages, so that's really useful for them who are just on mobile. They can just click to view the full screen and it'll automatically put it up onto their screen without having to download anything, which is obviously really beneficial. So that is the Documents widget. So now we're going to look at kind of the social side to release, and that means we're going to look at the social widget firstly. So just for context, the social widget is mainly used for social feeds. So that could be a Twitter timeline, keyword, Facebook timeline, or feed, or an RSS feed. So for purpose of example today, we're going to display a Twitter timeline. So we're going to key social feed. And you do that by just entering the Twitter username, which you can see is featured just underneath that information here. So if you just upload any kind of name that's relevant to you, that should be fine. So do that by doing this, press save. And again, what Release does is goes and automatically fetches that feed and it's live and sitting on your page. So just to give more clarity about what it means to have a live page, rather live feed on your page, all of these posts are live and up to date in terms of their stats. And also what it means is if there's a new post uploaded, if a new post has been uploaded after you've created this page, it will automatically update onto the page. So any kind of new post will always be visible to any recipient that comes on. So again, this is a really useful way to have all of your content in a really dynamic way onto your page without having anyone to click through to view these feeds or anything like that. And also is obviously a clear step away from like traditional reporting where you'd usually have to print screen these. And then by the virtue of that, have kind of the absence of live statistics on those posts. So this is obviously really beneficial. So now we're going to look at the Embed Widgets. And the Embed Widget is a way that you can kind of select key posts. So what I mean by that is that if there's key posts from, I don't know, Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram, you can do that individually by using the Embed Widget. So just for clarity and the difference between the social widget and the Embed Widget, the social widget is typically used for feeds, whereas the Embed Widget is typically used for individual posts. Just for more information around the Embed Widget, it allows you to have more than one type of social media in one widget. So what I mean by that is if you had a LinkedIn post as well as a Twitter post that you wanted to showcase, you can do so by using the Embed Widget. So we're just going to show you how to do that now. So for example, I'm going to use a Twitter post, and all online kind of social media feeds all allow you to embed that of content, and it usually sits on the right hand side of the post like so. Select embed the tweet like you did similar to the video, copy and paste like so. And like I said, if you had another post that you wanted and you wanted it to feature in there, you can do so by doing that. So for example, we're going to use LinkedIn. We're going to embed this post. Copy and paste it like so. Pop it in there. And also, just as a tip, it's really useful to make this widget scrollable, and that means it won't take as much space up on your page. And so you can select the height of the widget like so, and then press save. So as you can see, again, it automatically pulls that through and it fits everything in like so, and then your recipient can just scroll through this widget to see those posts. Or alternatively, you can place it in the highlight section, whatever you feel is more relevant to kind of your report or page that you're doing. So some of our clients will have their social in the highlight section, whereas others might have it in the deep dive section. There's no strict rule, of course, on how to format your pages, but just for the sake of example, in this kind of webinar, we just want to pop it in the deep dive section like so. So that's kind of a wrap up on the social side. So I'm just going to finish up this product kind of side of things with looking at the links widget and the contact widget. Just for context, the links widget is a really great way to navigate, allow people to navigate through different kind of pages. So best practice tip here is if you had other internal pages that you would still want to be showcased, or if you are a company or a kind of service that has a lot of brands or anything like that, is a really great way to kind of link through to those other brands internally and have that all on your page. So that's just a tip, and obviously how you do that is just by adding your links. So that could be another release page, or it can also be another external page, and you just add a title like so. So that's kind of the links widget quickly gone through. And then finally, we're just going to look at the contact widget, which, as you might guess, is a way to have your key contact information onto the page. So you do that by just entering these boxes with all the relevant information and then pressing save. So that's just kind of wrap up of all those widgets alongside some best practice tips for you. So now what we're going to do is talk about sharing pages. So what I mean by that is we're going to run through kind of how to share a page firstly, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but for those that don't, we're just going to go through that very quickly. And we're also going to talk about kind of a best practice example of an email. So firstly, what we're going to do is go to the control panel like so. And here we've got the page that we've just created. So just for context, for those that don't know, a release page automatically saves throughout, so there's no need to save. However, once you're ready to share the page, all pages are turned off by sharing mode by default, which means you manually need to turn them on. So you do that by going to the share page option, switch that on, and a link will be automatically generated for you. Just for information, these links are highly secure, which is why they are so long. So they're virtually uncrackable by any kind of external party that hasn't got this link. You do have the option to have a short URL still, by its nature, it's highly less secure, and we kind of suggest keeping to the shareable long link here. You also have the option to put an expiry link date on. So if you want a page to expire after a certain date, and what I mean by that is that it just won't be visible by kind of recipients any longer, it will still be in your control panel. You also have the option to do that. So that's how you share a page. So if you copy and paste this link, you need to, usually what we see is these being placed into emails. So I'm just going to talk about kind of the best practice side of that. So we've kind of looked at what works really well. So here's kind of an example of a best practice page. And what we really try to suggest is that use a hook from your report to be the subject line. So what I mean by that is if you had a really key achievement that you wanted to showcase, so that could be, for example's sake, a CEO being mentioned in a particular newspaper, or maybe a deal that your company's just worked on, or anything along those lines, is a really useful thing to use as a subject line. People automatically become more engaged in something that sounds interesting, and it's kind of a way to work. You know, normally what you see is weekly reports, and there's a way to keep refreshing kind of what these reports might have, and a way to keep ensuring that people click onto these reports. In terms of the body of the email, it's usually better to keep it quite concise. So 3 neat bullet points is what we've got here, but obviously it doesn't have to be exactly like this. And what we also suggest is kind of using a print screen from your report to place into the email, like you can see. You can either hyperlink that image, or you can add a hyperlink, which is what we've done here, is click here for the full report. So that's just kind of a nutshell of a best practice email, and I hope that is helpful for you. So that's just kind of a wrap up of the sharing pages options that we have. So the final thing that I'm going to talk about before I pass over to questions is tracking engagement. So more often than not, I'm asked about kind of what constitutes good engagement. So one thing that I want to reiterate is all of our clients that I work with have one really key thing in common, is that they want to increase the engagement that they get. So using Released allows you to do that through the reporting functionality. So this allows you to have an indication of how your stakeholders are interacting with your page. So I'm going to give you an example of what something looks like, or a reporting kind of function looks like, and it looks a little bit like this. Well, it looks exactly like this rather. So here you kind of got the total visits. So this is a good way to kind of track how many people are actually clicking onto your pages versus how many people these reports are going to. So that's obviously quite a good indication of engagement. But I think what's really more important is kind of the average time spent on your page. So this is kind of a really key indication of how people are engaging with your pages. And a lot of times I get asked about kind of what is a good, healthy amount of time spent. And what we've seen through researching and talking to our clients is that there's a little bit of a sweet spot. And that sweet spot falls between 1.5 minutes, ranging to anything to like 3 minutes or over. For some reports that might be a little bit longer. But typically speaking, a really healthy amount of time is around the 2-minute mark, as you can see here. The reporting functionality also gives you the option to see how people have viewed your page. That can be either through a desktop or laptop, mobile, and also the times of visits, which is also useful for those that might want to start looking at sending these reports out in a really kind of way, that a good time, if that makes sense. So times that really gets the most engagement. So maybe a Friday last thing might not get that much engagement versus kind of Monday morning first thing. I hope this has been useful for you all, and thank you so much for taking the time to listening to this webinar. So have a great day and speak soon. Thank you very much. Bye.